I can't read a book. And there's a little moment of vulnerability here because it's a very common thing when I'm in situations like this. What's the last book you read? Do I actually say that I don't read?
Carlton,
Yeah, I would never do it. There's no airplane journey that's so boring that I would still want to read.
It feels good, man. It feels good, right? Yo, I'm in the light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, Carlton, you ready?
Ready to go.
All right, Ty, you ready?
Oh boy.
Timeout. Tyler, who are we taking a timeout with today?
Oh man, Kev, that was another good whistle, brother. And ladies and gentlemen, children of America, we have Carlton Dossman, the corporate vice president of U.S. commercial industries at Microsoft. Carlton, thanks for being on the show. And I got to dive in how you're on the show, I think, for the audience. So a year ago, I was at like an AI event, and there was like probably 20 speakers. And everyone's talking AI, and it's kind of funny thinking about a year ago with AI talking. I don't even know if we were right on that stage. All I remember is when you were talking, like your style hit me. I was like, that guy can dress good. And then like whatever came out of your mouth, AI, I didn't listen. And I truly mean this, Carlton. I said to myself, I bet that dude is a good dad and a husband. Like, that's all I could think about. Like, I was sitting in this crowd of like 2,000 people just thinking about Carlton Dossman probably being a good husband and a dad. So Carlton, right off the bat, what does your family love most about you, do you think?
I don't know about that. I think they probably appreciate that we celebrate a lot. I think that's we've got 5 kids and we have a lot of experiences, and so we create a lot of family bonding. And I think my wife and I lead that. We are very quick to want to celebrate achievements, successes, and all the different milestones that 5 kids have as they are coming up through the ranks. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I think they probably appreciate a little bit of the, I guess, role modeling of dad and husband, and in particular more husband probably. I hope that my 4 boys want to try to replicate what the relationship that Kelly and I have, and hopefully my daughter is going to try to find someone who will be equally as fond of her as I am and treat her well. And so I think that those are the things that I think they probably, as they are becoming more adult children, reflect back on in our house. So clearly, a family of 5 kids and 2 adults. We've had our issues and we've worked through them, but for the most part, we try to find the positive in everything we do, even when we're falling down at times.
So with 5 kids, VP at Microsoft, is there a strategy you use to remember to celebrate?
I think it's intentional because I talk about work-life balance is kind of out the window these days with technology. So, turn on at, Monday morning, turn off Friday afternoon, or even in the days in between aren't necessarily realistic. So we look at harmony more than balance. And so there are times that I pivot more towards work, and sometimes I pivot more towards family. But I think the thing that I always am like really dialed in on is moments that matter. And I think our family appreciates those moments that matter. And so it's not just being there, but it's also being present mentally. I know that was something I had to think about, as I matured and, got a little bit older. There were plenty of probably Christmas holidays as I was closing out a fiscal year and worried about, what was going on at work where I may be physically present, but not mentally present. But those moments that matter, they just stand out. And that's work related too. I tell my team, make sure you're there for the moments that matter for work, but make sure you're there for your family and your friends and I think as I've gotten a little bit older, I also think about moments that matter for others. And so that's sort of my next evolution of that concept, is being there for the people around me in their moments as I become older, and maybe their moments are more frequent than mine at this point.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You said so much that I want to dive into. But I guess before we get into the fun stuff, one other question. So, not bottom of the 9th, Texas A&M versus Texas. You're coming out of the pitcher's box out in middle field. What song are you rolling out to for a high pressure, high situation? You guys are up 1 run.
Let's close it out.
The game.
By the way, so I've got a go-to song. I'll tell you a little bit about that, right? Yeah. So the song, let me start with the song and then we'll reverse back into why that's my go-to song. So song is U2, Beautiful Day. And that's the most inspiring song. If you're a U2 fan, I mean, how can you go wrong with any of the catalog of U2 collection? But that one in particular is good. I'll tell you a quick story. We're kind of all over the place, which I guess we're going to do for the next 45 minutes or so. But when I was a little bit younger, I've always been a little bit, I guess, challenged with moderation, and it's kind of 5 kids by the time I was 31, and got engaged and married right out of college, engaged in college. So we've always had fun with things. So I was a runner in my younger years, but nothing serious. And one day I was at a barbecue with my in-laws, and we were in the backyard celebrating with the family and everything. And my wife's cousin's there, and she's from out of town. I said, "What are you doing here?" And she goes, "I'm going to run the Big D Marathon tomorrow." And this is a Sunday morning, and so I'm like, "Well, I like running. Maybe I'll do that with you." And so we end up going home late, probably with a few too many glasses of wine. And at 5 in the morning, I woke up and said, "I'm going to go do this." And Kelly's like, "You're crazy. You've never run more than 5 miles, maybe even 3." And I said, "We'll be fine." So I rolled downstairs. Kids were younger at the time. Hit the pantry, grab a thing of Pop-Tarts and a Diet Coke, and head to the Cotton Bowl, and set out on this journey. When I walked up with to register, I had this Diet Coke. You would have thought I had a cigarette in my mouth, because everyone's looking at me like, "You got the gel packs," and they're doing them. And so 4 hours later, but the real part, this is a little bit earlier. This is probably 15 years ago ish, maybe. And you didn't have like large volumes of storage on your devices for your headphones. And so I heard "Beautiful Day," like, I don't know, 56 times in a matter of 4 hours, maybe more. And so that's always, I just associate that with mind over matter, getting through something challenging, and also in lifting up your positive, optimistic attitude.
Oh, I love it. I mumble the first verse every time too, Carlton. I don't even know what Bono says. It's like, "Your heart is a blue gold," and it just cracks the beautiful day, and the day is on. I've been there.
Right.
Dude.
So anyway, I don't know how we got there, but that's how I'm coming out of the bullpen.
I love it. I love it.
Closing.
I like your chances of closing the game strong, beating Texas.
So
So
let's maybe get into some pivotal moments in your career, if you don't mind, Carlton. Like, you and Kevin started at ADP, by the way. This is kind of cool to me that you guys both started there. And can we just go, have you taken anything from when you first began over to Microsoft, where you are at your career right now?
Well, I reflect back at that time, and sometimes you just are very fortunate in the environment that you get involved with. And ADP is a fantastic sales culture. So, quick side note, I mean, I went to A&M, enjoyed my time there, but I was done with school like exactly the moment that I walked across that stage. And so it was very clear to me I wasn't going to be a doctor, I wasn't going to be a lawyer, I wasn't going to be a CPA. So my career profession was narrowing quickly. So I was like, guess got to be a sales guy. I need to be pretty good at it with this wife, Kelly, who's got some high expectations. And so couldn't be more fortunate that I had the opportunity to work for ADP as a 21, 22-year-old, train in Parsippany, New Jersey for 2 weeks, which is not all that common anymore in corporate America, to learn foundational skills and the fundamentals of what sales is all about. Our deals are much more complex at this stage for what I do and who we do it with, compared to schlepping a little payroll to small businesses. But all those things still stay with me, always having the intensity every day to bring it, having the accountability. I mean, having to stand up in front of your peers each week on a Tuesday evening at roll call and tell everybody how much you sold or didn't sell. You quickly find out whether this is the game for you, for sure. And I thrived on it and was like, hey, I get this, and I can go and do this for the rest of my life. I still think back about all those things that I learned at ADP. And actually, it's funny that we say that, because my son, Caden, just recently graduated from University of Oklahoma, and he wants to follow in his dad's footsteps. And he's got far more potential than I have for leadership and sales ability. And so I'm trying to channel him into something like that so that he can have that same sort of experience. So, yeah.
It's amazing how much sales, right, it's life, right, in general. I think, to your point, in seeing the accountability piece, I think hearing other people's reflections on what they learned and what they took away from sales is powerful, because I never saw it as that. It was like, I'll always like, yeah, you never overpromise and underdeliver, because they're always reporting that up to the stockholders, and if it doesn't come true, it's yes.
I reference it in every town hall and every leadership meeting frequently. Sales intensity, accountability, and urgency. It's the theme of sales success.
That's awesome. Go back to like you mentioned, right? You started dwindling. You knew you didn't want to go to a postgraduate program. Were there pivotal like pivots in your career to get to where you are? Like obviously, I don't know if you woke up when maybe the age of 12 and said, I'm going to work for Microsoft one day. I think very rarely when I look at my journey do I actually end up where I ever thought I would be. Is there distinctive pivots which led to your next opportunity or something that brought you like, oh, I really enjoyed this. I like doing this. Go back to maybe some of those major pivots that you can go back on your journey.
Yeah, there's probably 2 that come to mind and, not to, spend a lot of time on my career journey, but I basically have had 3 stops in essence. And we talked about ADP and I did that for a while, but ended up at a company, when I got going in tech, a company called Success Factors in 2003. This is when, SaaS was a new thing. So delivering applications over the web with, security and workflow was basically the only idea. It was a performance review form. But I joined this company, went out, kind of, got there by accident and it was like, oh boy, this is hardly a company. There's a handful of employees and a handful of customers, and they were operating out of VC and in the Bay Area and San Mateo. And, you know, that was a unique opportunity. So I felt like that was my on the job MBA program because it was the right time for my life where I was craving and thirsty for new knowledge. And so, although I'm not a formal learner, as we just talked about, struggling with academics and doing that in a formal environment, not my thing. I'm huge about experiential learning. So it's not that I'm not about learning and growth. I absolutely, and that provided me an excellent environment to do that because you got to do so many more things. And if you're pigeonholed into a small remit as an individual contributor in a large company, we got to see everything. I always have said, put yourself in the path of growth. That was a hyper growth experience. It was a transformational experience for HR and technology coming together. And it's very similar to the patterns that I've seen in other cycles for tech, even today with AI. So I think that probably was like a big moment for me, and we rode that through, an IPO and then acquisition to SAP, and then that was probably the next big stop as SAP having more of a formalized executive presence, and I leaned into more leadership acumen. And then, coming to Microsoft, I think at Microsoft, I felt like I made that transition into an empathetic leader. And so those are probably the big things that if you look at 3 major milestones from, or maybe 4 if you count rolling out of college and getting your first job, those are probably the big 4 distinct moments that have shaped me in both my view of leadership and also just how to execute and be a good sales person, sales leader, all the above. So yeah,
Hmm. Thanks for
And
sharing
Carlton,
that.
I saw you comment the other day on LinkedIn about
yeah,
consistent leadership, I think was the title of it.
yeah,
And it struck me. I had a coach back in high school. He just said, be like the ocean waves, White. First quarter, second quarter, fourth quarter, like they don't stop. And I
yeah.
think the consistent part, I think, first impressions are kind of a wash nowadays. I'm like, I want to know where you are, like impression 89. But, like, how do you keep that consistency? Like you said, you always gotta be on. How do you do it? Any best practices or drop some knowledge
Yeah.
on that if you could?
Well, I mean, I think when you think about consistency, I think it's super important in leadership, especially leadership at scale, because that's the thing that you can't go and surprise folks. You can't change your vision or north star on a frequent basis, otherwise you lose the masses and the followership that you get with the collective group achieving more success together than individually. And so that consistency and repetition of message, but also I think what you hit on, showing up consistently is super important because, and I also like to be authentic. So my onstage personality is probably not that much different than if we were having a beer, one on one, or if I was doing a mentoring session for early career, or whether I was, doing a coaching session with a direct report. And so I think people have that builds trust if they know what to expect. It also allows you to provide more coaching that is easier. received and acknowledged if you are consistent, because no one wants to hear from somebody that comes out of left field and you're like, I don't know, do you really even have a full appreciation of the body of work that you're commenting on? And so that's sort of my philosophy when I think about that. And we're big on coaching and development. In fact, a new thing that we're thinking about in Microsoft, just in this era of AI, where even though I've got, a couple decades and a lot of gray hair of experience, I mean, I'm not necessarily the AI expert compared to maybe a 27-year-old who's just joined Microsoft. So we talk about non-hierarchical learning and coaching, so that it's not just, hey, boss to direct report. It's everybody leaning in and observing, regardless of role or function, and sharing the experiences, because right now that's incredibly important in the world we live in. And that's not a Microsoft statement. That's everywhere. I mean, our customers I'm telling the same thing about cultural transformation within the enterprise, because they're doing the same thing. How do I have the behavioral changes to absorb, adopt, and leverage AI capabilities?
That's awesome. I love the non-hierarchical learning. I think for a long time, mentorship, whether you were assigned a mentor or got to select a mentor, it always amazed me that the older mentor always thought like, oh, I'm coaching them, and not really realizing how much bi-directional learning that was actually happening.
100%.
And I love what you said, is like admitting what you don't know. I want to go back to the piece that you just touched on, authenticity. You're the same person you show up on stage as the same person that you would be if Tyler and myself and you were having a beer, listening to a beautiful day together. How did you get there, right? How did you get to that point to feel comfortable in your own skin and knew who you were? Was it immediate? Like, was that in high school? Was that later?
No.
I
I
found, right, as the world has a way of telling you who you need to be, especially for sales, they were always told like, me, talk like them, sit like them. And so it's like got very confusing very quick. You're like, oh, I'm having success, but I'm not really who I really think I am, or I'm just really pretending on who I believe that other person wants me to be. So
Yeah.
when did you grow into that?
So I think there's a couple of things in that. I mean, you're right. That sort of sales 101 was mirror the person across the table and make sure that you're aligned to them. I think that is important. And probably early in my career, I was good at that. And so I thought that maybe my superpower is the chameleon aspect of being able to, relate to a lot of people. But I think over time, where I think that I've pivoted a bit from that is, rather than trying to mirror them, trying to really be more curious about them. And that's a statement of talking to customers or employees or just people in general in my life, is understanding who they are and how they got there. Is an incredible learning experience. My daughter, who's a freshman at University of Oklahoma, I wrote her a letter as she went off to college. And I'm like, that's one of the things that I hope that you embrace, because the experience you have in college is to be curious and learn from others, and be able to then apply your experiences to their objectives and their ambitions. And then, really be grateful that you're part of that. And I think that's a really important message that that makes me feel more comfortable. So to get to your question, that is where over time, it was less about me and more about others. And it was more about my own journey on my own timelines. I tell mentors, or I'm sorry, early in career folks I'm mentoring, they come with these rigid, structured goals and plans. And I'm like, yes, you can't be like, like all over I had a North Star the whole time. Kelly, my wife, helped me, she is my North Star, and we've anchored our family and my career around that. So that's important. But putting dates and times, I'm not sure I subscribe to that methodology of goal achievement, because things happen that are outside of your control. And I always tell people, be patient. As long as you know what you're trying to aspire to be, the time will come. And when I got away from that, I felt much more comfortable, because I was so focused on, I need to be a second line leader, a third line leader. I need to make more money. I need to do this. And all those things seem somewhat irrelevant, although that I am very grateful for what I've accomplished, of course. But, you know, I reflect back on this now, because I'm certainly on the back nine. 10 to 18 quickly, right? And so now all of a sudden time means something to me, as I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, what is my legacy? What do I want to accomplish before I, sail off into the sunset? So
I think that's powerful, though. I think the dates and times, I mean, let's face it, most people would set surface level goals or goals that they know they can achieve so they don't end in that failure, that fear of failure. And it sounds like from what you shared, you went from a goal, rigid goal with dates and timelines to more of like a mission or a vision, which was more empowering. And I loved what you shared too, that you find yourself more in the service of others and staying curious and
yeah,
asking them questions rather than you always answering theirs.
that's one of my favorite shows, Ted Lasso. If you remember in season 1 when he's throwing the darts and in the pub, and he talks about curiosity.
Yeah.
It's it.
The guy just had to ask him the right question, right? He was a pro the whole time. Dude, Lasso, let's. I want to ask you one thing, Carlton, about dreams. Like I always hear people say, chase your dreams. How do you find your dream is what I struggled with for 35 years of my life. Like, how did you find what your true dream was to, get you out of bed, fired up every day? Because I can't imagine how fired up you are to get out of bed some of these days, Carlton, talking to on these massive deals with, legal procurement, the board, all these things. I can only imagine. And you make me feel more sane because I do that on a way smaller scale. But how did you find your dream? Because that's what I think a lot of us struggle with, finding that purpose. But when did that hit you in
Well,
life?
and I think you just nailed it. That was exactly where I was going to go. And I talked to my kids about this is you need to have a sense of purpose. That is what is the single biggest motivating factor in your life. When you wake up with a sense of purpose, knowing what you're trying to accomplish that day, and that can be big or small. It can be a stepping stone to something greater. Um, so that's the number one is what is your sense of purpose and how do you recognize that daily? Because here's the thing, you know, uh, we're going back to moments that matter. Like no single moment is a defining moment in your life. It's a series of moments that build on each other and giving yourself grace when those moments are not going the way you expected, but yet still also celebrating when the moments are going right. But as long as you have that sense of purpose of where you want to be, uh, you know, then you're headed towards your dream. Now, here's the interesting thing, again, reflecting at my age currently and, my life experience to this point is being grateful of your dream. And like, that's the part that, that I am working on now is to say, okay, I do have a dream that has been fulfilled. And am I acknowledging that and enjoying that moment? And is it fulfilling enough? And then, my wife and Kelly and I have this conversation a lot about, what's next, what's more, and like, what are the sacrifices and trade-offs and of all of that. But I'm very blessed I think of myself as having won, and that's a good thing. And by the way, everyone should have that feeling regardless of whatever job that you end up with at the end of your career or whatever your family situation. I hope everyone feels like they've won.
That's awesome, Carlton. And I think I finally struck that a few years ago. And to me, I got the feeling of, I don't ever want this life to end.
Yeah.
That was the first time I felt it in my chest. And I was like, it's about time, man upstairs. And I wanted to go back to something real quick. You mentioned you were talking to your son. Can you share some what are you teaching him? You said he wants to follow your footsteps. What advice are you giving him at his age right now?
Well, a lot of it. And it's like, I think I probably have had more dad moments recently than probably the collective 22 years prior, just trying to help him. But he's a great kid and his future's so bright. But, he wants to understand, everything about what coming of age means. And so that is advice on how to get a job, how to relate and interact with professionals, business professionals, which is different than being, he's, the man on campus, right? Well, okay, well, take that, but now you got to modify that a bit for corporate America or, business world. Also what it means to have a relationship and also setting his expectations because going back to a lot of the themes we've talked about so far, I mean, I think he's probably very ambitious, but, I think he needs a little bit of patience as well. So we spend a lot of time on those topics. And I think, it's great because it's very rewarding to me because, I see a lot of myself in him and our family in him and he's a leader within our family. And so we talk about what that means. And we talk about that with all of our kids, by the way, not just him.
Yeah.
So it's good. I mean, I don't think there's any specific call out. I don't have the blueprint for him. I have told him though, he is a master, like similar to me. He's more of an experiential learner. He did fantastic academically, but he's more high energy. He's figured out how to use Copilot the way the rest of our next generation will understand AI because it is a true digital assistant to him. And that's kind of an interesting concept that I get from him on how he goes and follows up on anything that I suggest to do. He comes back doing it completely differently than what I would have done at that age or even now. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good. That's fine.
Yeah.
Dude, that
It's
is
almost as if like the kid's curiosity and naiveness, it's almost a blessing. The more knowledge or more experiential learning that you have, you start to get to that point. It's like, oh, I know that, or I've been there. And that's, and I love what you said earlier. And I want to go back to it because you talked about your evolutionary learning, right? At this stage, fully admitting that you're not the same person that you were last month, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. And the concept of being a role model at home. I think that I have a 4.5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I think that was one of the greatest reflection points that I was given from God, right? It's like, hey, here you go. You think you got it figured out. All of a sudden you get to see the world very differently, very quickly. Actually, my first call, Carlton, was to my mom apologizing for all my experiential learning over life.
Well, I will tell you, my oldest, I keep telling him, even now at his age, I'm like, can we just learn from some of your friends and not do it
I,
ourselves? Like, and I make the, I mean, we have 4 boys. I mean, whether it's when they're off at college or, at the lake or whatever, I'm like, the amount of idiot tax I've had to pay over the last, I'm like, can you please just look around and see that that person made that mistake and maybe we don't have to do that. But no, we make them all.
yeah. Yeah. I remember my mom saying something very similar. So, but the idea of a role model and you talked about this evolution that you had in your
Wow.
career from really an individual contributor, and now you're an empathetic leader. And I think that transition is really challenging for most people, right? It's like, I know how to motivate myself. I know how I communicate. I know the things that I need to be doing. And now you're leading a team of 5,000 people, right? What things systematically needed to change, maybe mentally, for you to get to that point of true empathetic leadership? Because I think that is like the secret sauce of today,
Yeah.
to really tune in to the motivational pieces. But what would you tell other leaders that might be leading a team of 5 or 10 or even 2? What was that evolution for you from an IC to now a world leader?
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept, and I reflect on this recently with my leadership team is thinking about most successful people. Typically, if you do some sort of psychological analysis of what your personality traits are, you're typically a driver, right? And so you're like action biased and let's just go, go, go. And there was a certain bit of I'm a big believer and was fortunate to, have an experience at the Thayer Leadership Group at West Point to, think about how the military thinks about leader intent and how you establish that and how ultimately you empower people around you then to do the how. So establish the what and the why and allow them to do the how. And it's something that I revisit frequently to make sure that I'm doing that. Although I think I'm much better at empowering the how through my teams than I was earlier. And that doesn't and again, that came to your point, that's not whether it's 5 or 5,000 or whatever. It's but I think I wouldn't say that consensus thinking is always the best, but I think I have realized and reflected and observed where direction is like dictated versus that balance of the what and the why, and then facilitating a culture for the empowerment to bubble up and the potential to be realized from all those folks around you. And that's really what I think about a lot around that. And I would say, in terms of mentors, I don't think I've specifically had this conversation with anyone. I've had executive coaches from time to time, and I've had strong people around me, and I'm very, very grateful for the folks I've worked for and with. And but I'm an observer of behavior more than anything.
Mm.
That makes sense. And so, and that also is to observe what I don't want to ever come across like, and what I've seen. I won't name any names there, but I've seen things I'm like, I don't know if that was the best way to handle that, or if that's the best way that you want to project your leadership and impact on them, on others. And so that's again, a lot of that is just get a little bit older, but I also I'm a huge sports fan as you guys are. And so I look around and although I don't know these individuals, I take away what I feel like they are. Roger Federer being probably the top of the list of who I admire. Never met him, but you seem to think he's pretty authentic in the way he carries himself and the grace that he has on both winning and losing and sportsmanship and authenticity. Others would fall in that, like, Derek Jeter and Jordan Spieth, although I wish Jordan would win a little bit more now.
So does Jordan.
Him. But I tried to pick a couple of generations there so that it'd be relevant there. But anyway, I guess that's we
I
can
love
talk.
it because I think to your point, having like role models, and I think for a long time I thought role models, I needed to know them, right?
Mhm.
But the observational impact to formulate this vision or this dream of who you want to become is so helpful. And I think you can admire certain traits and see certain traits in yourself. And I guess I always looked at the spot it, you got it methodology, the things that other people were doing that were driving me nuts were the things that I wasn't willing to admit that I also did, but I could spot it very quickly. But also to the strength side of it as well.
Yeah.
I loved how you said that, being an observer, settling your mind, not needing to be the loudest voice in the room, and I think frankly, probably why you and I were both successful in sales. And obviously you are way more successful than I am when it comes to sales, but observationally allowed me to truly consult and problem solve and lead someone on the journey to get to the vision that I helped and that we helped work together to create.
Yep.
Back to the
No,
ADP training days, right?
yeah, that's right. And I'll tell you, maybe it's a loose association to that, but grit determination. I mean, grit is like, the resilience you have because nothing ever goes perfectly and you always have a challenge. Even when you're winning, it sometimes is painful. I'm looking at the baseball field behind you there, Tyler. And as a kid, I grew up in outside of Baltimore, Maryland, and was a huge Orioles fan. My dad and I would we had season tickets and we'd go to the games. And at the time, Cal Ripken was there. And I was just like, I was just enthralled by him. I mean, that's a little bit more throwback on age there, but Iron Man, right? I mean, like the guy, he must have been hurting so many times on that field, and he would never let his teammates down, never let himself down. It was like, okay, just power through and make it work.
Dude, and I
Yeah.
love getting motivation outside of our line of business is
Yeah.
what I love. Like I thought I had to like read all these books and I just got bored. And I never forget like when Brett Favre retired, like he was my man back in the day. Like
Yeah.
I was so just fired up. I remember someone was on the side of the road and I like helped them with the flat tire. All for motivation from Favre. I don't know why. But like I love getting inspiration from outside the box. I think it's very healthy and important.
Well, I'll tell you that I'm similar to you. So, I mean, like, I'm not lying about the whole, where I spend my time and how I grow. I can't read a book. I haven't read a book. Honestly, I'm like, I can't do that. So like and it's always an uncomfortable moment, by the way. Read?
Yeah, yeah. Carlton, yes.
I would never do it.
Yeah.
Dude, I used to walk
There's
by
no
the book.
airplane journey that's so boring that I would still want to read.
Well, you're right up my alley, Carlton. I call it cannonball learning. I'm the
Yeah.
steel experimental learning. I just love jumping in, messing it up from the inside, learning to tell the battle wounds. I blame it. I'm like the last era of the helmet to helmet contact is what I tell everybody. Like my dad coached high school football in Texas and Arkansas, and I literally blame it on loving contact. And you talked about speed earlier, and when people ask about whatever my little success that I've had lately, to me, it's response time. Always showing up even when things go bad.
Uh-huh.
It just means almost more than when things go good. Can you kind of give us what your take is when things go a little sideways and how to keep showing up and how important it is to not run away for 48 hours and shoot an email about something?
100%. So, it's one of my pet peeves is the pass the buck email or at so-and-so to bring them into the party. And you're like, okay, well, that's not really helping anything. I mean, 100 emails doesn't fix anything ever. So I'm definitely a proponent of get in there and roll your sleeves up and do something. I'll tell you a couple of thoughts that I kind of gravitate towards around speed and the ability to navigate that by lowering the amount of stress or brain cycles. You guys, so by the way, I didn't read this book. Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers. I heard about it and I'm like, I get that. And I read an article in a magazine about this guy that was going to go and learn to play golf with 1,000-hour theory, where he started from putting. He just spent hours putting 1-foot putts, and he worked his way back to the tee box after 1,000 hours to be an expert. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this whole concept. But what resonated to me is, and I probably should do that on my golf game, but I don't think I have 1,000 hours right now, but that's something to look forward to. Maybe I aspire. That's my dream.
Yeah.
What stood out to me is unconscious competence. And I think about that a lot and talk about it with our teams, because the more you can build up unconscious competence, the less exhausting it is to have to lean into those situations that are unfamiliar. So if you can build, and that's basically, as you rise into more span of control or scope of your job, you have to be building that so that, because I can't think about everything all day long, you know, all on. Some of it has to be natural, second
Mhm.
nature. And
Mhm.
so then you can pivot, because then you can recognize what is the most high yield, high impact use of my time, my energy. And that can be a number of things, depending on the day. The more things you can churn through. So I think about that a lot, even though I don't measure it in how many hours that I'm building up my unconscious competence, but that has happened over the years. I tell it to a lot of to folks who are looking to go to a next level. What does that mean? Especially when they're in a sort of a leadership role where they're going from maybe a functional leader to a transformative leader or an organizational leader. That's a big leap that I see. That's a very tough one at times for people to recognize how to get to that next level. And I think some of that is it, because the functional leader is constantly like, there. Okay, well, now you got to raise above, because you got to deal with these escalations that you have, and you got to prioritize. And, so that's kind of the way I
Well,
think about
I
that.
love your prioritization, because I was literally doing some sales coaching today, and I said, you're on this grand research project. Like, what worked for me is not always going to work for you. But
Mhm.
if you're not reflecting and saying, was this successful? Was this a good utilization of my time? One of my mentors early on, when I was in copier sales, he told me down to the minute what he made. And like just that concept in and of itself, I was like, oh, okay,
Ooh.
that's a different way to think. And that's
Yeah.
where you would say, I don't do that because I don't make as much as I would if I spent my time doing these things. And I
Yeah.
felt like that reflective process really helped me from a prioritization standpoint. I see a lot of people that struggle with time management. I think call it ADHD or just this constantly distracted society that we are today with 20-second clips on TikTok. But like, how do you help your team prioritize? How do you help them manage their time effectively, Carlton? Because I think that's one of the greatest things as leaders. When you have a system that works for you, educating other people to start to associate a higher value to time rather than task.
Well, I think that goes back to some of that leadership intent. We spend a lot of time across the commercial industries business at my level as the division lead, but also at the operating unit levels for each of the respective industry leaders, talking about what are our priorities, what are our core priorities. It gets a little more complicated because we operate in a big company. And so when you think about time management, there are certain things that we don't have control over. The company dictates where you need to be, what meetings you have to be a part of. We've got overarching goals and vision from Satya, and how do you distill that down? But I feel like one of the things we do really well, both at my level and my direct reports within their organizations, is what are the key priorities, and then there is a flavor of that we're experiencing because of the speed and pace of AI and market dynamics, that we have focus areas within that. Because we at Microsoft, because of the breadth of our products and solutions, we've got so many priorities. I'm like, okay, we can't have 100 priorities. But if we think about it in the customer's view, the outcomes they're looking for, and then reverse engineer to that, we anchor on a couple of things, and we talk about that, trying to be frontier by subvertical. That's an important one for our customers. Powered by people. AI is just an enabler for human ambition, and so that is something that we talk about both internally and with our customers. And then we've got a couple of others that are less relevant, but those are sort of the things that we think about. And so we come back and we discuss that in our business reviews monthly. I hope that it's going down into the organization in one-on-one coaching sessions, and IC to first line manager, because that's where the rubber meets the road. Ultimately, I have to transfer a significant amount of vision down to what the day in the life is at the ground level, and that sometimes can be a challenge. But we find sockets that we can do. We can work on that.
That's powerful. I mean, just the taking a translation of a vision to get it down to your key priorities and then focus areas. it helps that frontline employee, that IC, to actually understand how I move the needle towards that goal or towards that vision. I think that's
Well, and
so.
I think we talked about sense of purpose of just like what is your meaning in life, but what is the sense of purpose, the collective purpose of our organization? So that if I'm there and I'm doing this one thing, why is that meaningful across the rest of Microsoft? Why is it meaningful with the large team of Microsoft people that are likely engaging with an enterprise customer? Like what is that? And that hopefully inspires and motivates them to go above and beyond just a regular day.
Well, and then let them figure out the how. I love that.
100%.
You're
Yeah.
dang right. And Carlton, I got to tell my wife that we got a new term. So she calls me naively unhumble. I don't know better. And that rang a bell. I think you called it unconscious confidence. Was that right?
Competence. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell her that after she'll appreciate it.
Yeah. So it's good.
But I want to ask you, Carlton, if you were to, let's just take me, for example, if I was to fill your spot in 15 years, what would you tell Tyler White to get ready for?
What you should be ready for in 15 years?
To take Carlton's spot right where you're sitting, brother. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I will tell you this. I hit it both sides, right? Because we're volleying back and forth from professional and personal, right?
Yeah.
So in professional, I'll tell you that people ask me, what is my, secret to success, superpower? We use the term superpower in Microsoft a lot, but what do I need to think about? And I'm like, constant reinvention. And that is the thing. So I tell people whether I'm hiring a senior leader or anyone on the team, I think about two things. This is my success factors HR background around behavioral competencies. It's intellectual curiosity and learning agility. Those two things, when they intersect and are top of mind to anyone, you will constantly reinvent yourself. That's where my on-the-job MBA at Success Factors paid out so much, because we were reinventing the company on a probably quarterly, if not semi-annual basis. And so right now I look in the mirror and I tell folks right now, because we've got people who've been Microsoft 25, 30 years. And I'm like, okay, well, this is the new day. And I challenge myself every day. And so I guess the point, Tyler, is that, I have to work and I'm probably more exhausted now trying to be reinventing myself and relevant. And, I think about that every day. As your family transitions, I'm at a pivotal point here because I became an empty nester. So we had a house full of chaos with 5 kids for years. At one time, I mean, it was like more than zone defense. We had twins we had 3 kids that couldn't go to the bathroom by themselves. Right. And so so you can imagine the chaos. Right. And then that moved into, different kinds of chaos. I mean, we logged about, I don't know, a jillion hours on all the cross field coaching kids sports. So you go through these. So this one is a little more humorous though. So we were empty nesters for 6 months when all 3 of our youngest kids were at Oklahoma. And we were like, oh, what's this going to be like? Well, it was kind of great. Right. Right. And so then December, Caden graduates, she's back in the house and it's like, whoa, then they come back, they're your roommates. They're not your children. So I got a roommate, he's like, where's my shampoo? I guess Caden took it while I'm in the shower. Like, what happened? I'm like, I'm not the college roommate. And it's like, hey, what's for dinner, guys? I don't know. I think we're going to go to dinner by ourselves tonight.
You're on your own.
We're having him around, but then it's the phases of life, and I don't even know what it's going to be like, when they all have their own families, and what it to be a grandparent. But I guess the point is maybe that doesn't stop either. You have to reinvent yourself in your personal life as well, because now we're adjusting to what is this empty nest concept. With fortunately, the foundation of our family is about my relationship with Kelly. And so, that's what we think about. And I'm looking forward to reinventing myself another 5-7 years from now when they get married, have kids, and what it means to be a grandfather, all that.
Dude,
I
I
love your
think you
point
might
on
love
not
the
getting-
one book, Carlton, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
You've quoted him like 5 times on
Yeah.
this podcast,
Right.
but organically, if you wanted like a real book, man, like that, I scoffed at my wife when she gave it to me a few years ago. Then I read it and I was like, this might be my favorite book. And I don't read many books either, Carlton. I try to keep up with Kevin. He orders like 19 books at a time and zooms through them. I just don't have like I said, I'm a cannonball learner. I jump in. But can I ask you a fun? Like, I'm really curious about this question, Carlton.
Yeah.
So let's just put a scenario here. Say y'all are flying up to X and A. My old grandpa's laying up in good old Arkansas. You're about to go to a big box store. And I know about 90% of the people. My dad coached the CEO in 8th grade. He always says he should have played him more. But when you walk in there and you're closing a deal at your scale,
Yeah.
what's the feeling like walking in to an HQ like that, knowing what's about to happen?
I mean, it's pretty exhilarating, right? I mean, like the numbers are astronomical in the game we play right now, and that's not a reflection of anything that I do that's so significant. It's just it's the game, right? And so when you look at that, there's a little bit of exhilaration, but also a little bit of anxiety, and I'll tell you why. Because companies are making a big bet when they invest that much and commit that much to us, and so I walk away. It's a little bit different than, yeah, it's just some celebration, a lot of hurrah, like, but, closing a deal maybe earlier in my career, I was like, yeah, I got a commission coming. We're going to go on vacation or whatever. Like, I worked that for 6 months, a year, whatever, beat the competition and everybody said I couldn't, all that stuff. This is more like, okay, now we are on the hook to deliver. And this is going to be critically important because people have banked their career on that. Companies have banked their existence and where they're going to be 5 to 10 years from now. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And so sometimes that sort of settles in more than it did in the past when you talk about deals and transactions that are the size and magnitude of ours. And of course, the dependence on the company for, the accountability I have to, Microsoft to make those happen, because if I'm not making those happen, that's a big problem too. So there's a little bit of all that mixed into one. But
Hmm.
again, that's not necessarily about me. That's just, the game I'm in.
Yeah, and at that level of the game, and I don't mean this in any bad or good way, do relationships even matter then? Like, I was thinking about this last night in bed. Like, if you're about to close a multi-B deal, like, does it even matter if the person likes you? Like, what is that like?
I think trust always comes through, and I think that's more important than like. And so I think, yeah, multi-billion-dollar deals are not struck because you go to a baseball game together or whatever, like play golf, a round of golf, and you get a multi-billion-dollar deal. But I think trust as 100% front and center. And are you the person ultimately, whether it's me, my team, or someone within Microsoft, is there going to be someone there when things are not going right? And that's where I think the relationship emphasis is on, rather than liking the person. It's like, are they knowledgeable? Can I trust them? Will they be there? And that's, I think, what shines through. And we're fortunate because the culture we built extends from Satya's vision, and so that kind of carries through just with everything we do. I mean, we're built on trust, right?
That's powerful. Yeah.
Eh,
And I think that's like anything. I always wanted to be the expert for that same reason, right? To be that trusted partner, but also be the one taking accountability. And I think I keep hearing you say, really, and everything that you've said today is this element of being selfless, right?
Mhm.
I think the ability to actually take responsibility for the career, right, or the existence of the business itself. I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it with other sales professionals that are pretty selfish, and they have short-term success for not long-term gains. And I loved what you said, because you kind of view life as this game, right? And I've heard other terminology like life entrepreneur. And when you went back and you said, don't get attached to really who you are today because you're going to be somebody totally different tomorrow. I think it's that idea like, oh, I've got it, right? I've have it figured out. And then you stop learning, you stop being curious, you stop listening. I really, really enjoyed kind of everything that you shared and how you really weaved it all together to become the man that we're talking to today. How has your definition of success changed over time?
Well, I mean, obviously, success early in my career slash my family. I mean, it was dependent on putting food on the table. I mean, literally, like at one time, I mean, I felt like I got a raise when we got someone off of diapers and formula. I mean, like it was. I mean, we because we got married so young and started having kids so young. I mean, when you have 5 kids by the time you're 31, I mean, like you're and my wife never worked because we got so many kids. I mean, like, so there was like some essential success requirements that
Yeah.
had to be met. But then, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think right now, I this is going to sound very old manish, but I'm very interested in what my legacy will be, like how
Yeah.
people view me as a family person. I think about If, if you're at my funeral, what are people talking about with me and that success? If they can say, Carlton influenced my life, impacted me in any way, either directly or indirectly. And, I have the fortune of, leading a large team. So I don't speak to every one of my organization on a regular basis, but hopefully that, their relationship with me, even if it's not direct, helps influence how they, and I get a lot of feedback, and that means a lot to me, by the way. And so to me, that's success. I would like to have, a few more things, but what does that really mean? I don't know. That goes back to I don't know, that was probably on the wish list of if I could ever have, that would be outstanding, but those are starting to dwindle and I focus more on the more meaningful impact that I have as my legacy. And so I hope that my career stops, my customers, my family, my network of friends, all of that. So
Yeah, we
I
heard
don't
it
know. And you
before.
can't really say what that means, but I hope it's good.
No, and I think we heard it before. Is like you're after the mission less than the prestige itself. And I always said it's impact or influence, and hearing just you transition to that, and I think that's powerful. I think that's where you share that story or that fear with somebody else. Like you're not alone. So that's exciting. I know I thoroughly enjoyed today's conversation,
Yeah.
Carlton. You definitely hit the cover off the ball in the bottom or top of the ninth to be up by one. So
We're
thanks.
fourth quarter down here, Kev. We're at Kyle Field, brother.
Yeah, yeah,
Dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
this has
in,
been awesome,
yeah, in
Carlton.
SEC country there, but yeah, you know what, guys, this was a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys invited me. I'm glad that we were able to make it work. Sometimes it's great just to bounce things off of folks, and in the spirit of reinvention and continuous learning, I've learned some stuff just to even have this conversation. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Carlton, I think we're going to title this, I'm going to be someone different tomorrow. That puts so much harmony in my wild Razorback heart over here. Because I'm a lot
Yeah,
like I said, the cannonball guy, but just knowing that you are like that too, Carlton, makes me feel a little less normal, more normal, I should
more
say. I'm
normal.
like,
Yeah.
more
because I'm
normal, sure.
constantly different. Like my wife's like, "Are you really doing this now?" And it just gets me out of bed, Carlton. And hearing someone as professional as you are, and if you ever needed anyone to rough some of those guys up in Bentonville, Carlton, I'm a text away, man. I have no problem for you, brother.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, excellent. Well, I enjoyed it. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.